Alright, so today I'm going to show you how to install my velocity adjustment modification for the Umarex TR50 or HDR50 revolver. I want to preface this first with that this velocity modification is for bringing the velocity down. I know some people want to increase the velocity for home defense or whatever other uses. But my goal for this is to bring the velocity down to allow it for paintball field usage, to get it under 300 feet per second. If you're wanting to boost the output, this is not for you. If you're wanting to use this for playing paintball and getting under 300 feet per second, this is what you're looking for. So first, we'll start with showing you the pieces of the velocity adjuster. We have the body, the devolumizing plunger, two spacers, an O-ring, and two screws. This was designed to be variable in how much volume it took out by using these spacers. So if you're playing in cold weather, you'll need more volume, so you'll have to remove some spacers. Whereas if you're playing in warm weather, you'll need all the spacers in place, and in most incidences you're going to use all the spacers. So basically these black Delrin spacers, this is a stainless 17.4 pH plunger. They just thread on here, and there's a couple different size screws. Here's set screws here. There's a long one, so if you're wanting to just use the short one here, that takes up one set bit of volume there. Or if you need to take up more volume, you can use, that's the 5mm one. This is the 10mm one. You can use this one to create another shaft for the other one to fit on. So that just screws on like that. This one screws on like so, and then this one screws in here to act as a locking screw to keep it from falling out. Like so. Before I go any further, I'm going to tighten these down so that they won't come loose. This is a 2.5mm nut driver, which you will need to adjust the velocity with these. You can purchase them on Amazon, and most tool stores will have them. Alright, now those are locked in place. So, the majority of uses, people are going to have all the spacers in place. I recommend using some Dow 55 grease on the O-ring. It just helps it swell up and make a nice seal. The O-ring on the devolumizing plunger is a M3 by 2.0, so it's got a 3mm inner diameter, a 7mm outer diameter, a 2mm cross section. On the body here we have at the back a M7.5 by 1, so it has a 7.5mm inner diameter, a 9.5mm outer diameter, and 1mm cross section. Both of these O-rings are Buna at 70 Duro. So this just screws together like so. On the front, there's another O-ring. This is a M8 by 1.5, so 8mm inner diameter, 11mm outer diameter. This one's a little special. It's also a Buna, but it's a 90 Duro. It needs to be a little bit harder than the other so it doesn't get pinched out when put in place. This will slip over the front like so. For some of them, it won't slide on and stay on as well as this one did, which is not such a big deal. When you install it, it will self-correct itself and be fine. So that's what they look like. When you get it, it will be assembled like so. You don't have to put it together like I just did. It'll come together just like that, ready to go install in. Back to the revolver. Typical TR50. This is a 7.5 jewel version. You can see the F stamp here. But this also works on the 11 jewel version also. So let's go ahead and start taking this apart. I've already kind of cooking showed this and removed the 15 screws that hold the body on. I suggest that you place them out on something like this magnetic card here. I got them vaguely in the shape of the marker so I know which screw goes where, because as you'll notice, some screws are different length, especially this long one right here. They have to go into a very specific hole. So I'm going to pull this off. I'm going to pull this out. This is kind of a pain because of these two. There we go. Go ahead and set the barrel and everything off on the side. So once we've done that, we're left with this. Next step we need to do is remove this rear piece here. A pair of circlip pliers work great for doing that. Once you get it loose, you can use something else to spin it out of there quickly. And there is our 7.5 jewel restrictor. If you have one of the 11 jewel valves, it's just a little bit different, the restrictor. As you can see, it's a much more open restrictor. And this one also has a restrictor down inside of here, which can be removed with a flathead screwdriver. Like so. This really doesn't have to be removed for what we're doing. It's up to you. I would just suggest leaving it in there because it makes it easier than having to worry about losing it. So, to remove this restrictor is going to be a little bit of a pain. You can maybe grab onto it with something and pull it out. This one's been in and out a lot of times, so I can usually grab on it and pull it out. If you've never removed this piece before, chances are that's not going to come out that easily. So you're going to have to completely disassemble this whole piece here. It's not too hard. It's just a bunch of Phillips head screws, type 1, that need to be removed. These all are the same size screws. Oh, unlike the body, it's not such a big deal about making sure the right one goes in the right hole. I believe there's 8 here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7. So once you've got all these unscrewed, I suggest just go ahead and taking them out. If you have a magnetic driver, it helps. Like I said, they're all the same size, so it really doesn't matter. So getting this part can be a bit of a pain if it's never been removed before. This one should come apart pretty easily. And here you have to be careful. There are a lot of springs that like to go shooting off if you're not careful. Alright, so now we have her all apart. set this off to the side here. So what we're going to want to do at this point is to remove this valve piece. So you're going to put your finger here, put it there, so you can pinch that spring and just slide it out. So we're going to take all the bolt assembly off. And what you'll need to do is to find something to push down in here to push the restrictor out. Not too difficult to do. You'll just take something, push it down in there. You might have to tap it with a hammer or something hard against some piece of wood. Just push that out. And there you go. When you remove the restrictor, there will be a little O-ring. Make sure it comes out and is not inside of there anymore. I'll set that off to the side. These are basically just a blow forward, so they're like an auto mag, except for they do not have a regulator or an on-off valve. So that's why they use this massive spring to push the bolt back so it can reset before the pressure builds up too high in there and tries to fire again. On the 11 joule valve, it's just the same thing. You're going to stick something down inside of there and push that out. It's a little harder because there's not as much of a lip to grab onto, and you're just going to push it out, and there's the restrictor out of that. So now we have both the valves. They're really the same thing. The only difference between the 11 joule and the 7.5 joule is this, the two restrictors they used. So this piece is pretty simple. It just slides inside of it. We'll go ahead and slide it inside of the 11 joule valve for reference. It's a little tight because the O-ring in there. You gotta make sure you line it up. There you go. And it pushes inside just like so. Then you'd put your piece back on there, which we'll go over in a second. So there is the 11 joule valve. No more need for that tonight. We're going to go back to the 7.5 that we're working on. So while you have this apart, it's a good idea to go ahead and probably clean your bolt, because it's going to be covered with paint, because these love to break paint. You can also notice on the bolt all the wear that's happening from the sear. These are pretty soft bolts apparently. So when you do have this apart, I don't recommend using any high viscosity lubrications or greases. Oil's probably your best bet. This one was leaking from this O-ring right here, so I'm going to drop a little oil in here and hope that'll help seal it up. Otherwise we'll have to replace that O-ring. Let's put a little bit of oil on the shaft. When you're reassembling, you will want to make sure that this bumper goes on first, then your bolt. Now we're going to install the velocity adjuster. I recommend dropping a little bit of oil on the O-ring. That way this just gets a nice seal. There we go. Push it like so. Now we're going to take our spring and place it back on there. Actually, one thing I suggest doing is actually not installing this piece just yet, because I just remembered I need to reinstall this into the body, and trying to press against that doesn't feel so great. So now that we've got everything clear, let's go ahead and squeeze everything back together and reinstall it into here. And of course one of the springs just shot off, as expected. So now this is back installed, and one of the springs that likes to shoot off is this sear spring. It just goes on here like so. You know, And now it's reinstalled. So now everything is correct. We'll put our barrel piece back in here like so. We'll put the top cover back on. Go ahead and throw all of the screws back into place. Just lightly threading them in right now. Now that all 7 are back in place, we can go ahead and start tightening down. Don't need to over tighten them. Alright, now is the time to install the adjuster. It would have been a lot more of a pain trying to install it with this. Make sure that O-ring's on there nicely. Like I said, it will self-align itself when installed. Just drop it in, press it in there nice and firmly. Alright, I'm going to set this off to the side. So next we have to take, this is the pop out, aired up indicator Degas button that threads onto the back here. This will be removed during this modification. You will lose this function. I think it's a trade-off that most are willing to make so they can adjust velocity. So first we have to remove all the guts of this, which is, there's an E-clip here. You just got to grip it and slide it off. It's a pain sometimes. There we go. Remove that E-clip. There'll be a spring, a washer, an O-ring, and the aired up indicator shaft. All of those pieces will be removed. Set them off to the side so you can use them if you ever want to return the gun to its original factory setup. So we're just going to set these off to the side now. So now that we just have a hollowed out screw here, we'll take this piece, slide it back on here, and thread it back in. That's where these circlip pliers come in handy here. Just going to thread it in. We're going to want to thread it in pretty tight, but not so tight that we cause that front facing O-ring to deform. It's pretty hard to do that, but it's technically a risk. Alright, now she's in all nice and tight. As I said, you'll use a 2.5mm nut driver to adjust the velocity. You screw in to go down, you'll screw out to go up. All you're doing is basically changing the volume of air in the dump chamber when you do that. So at this point, it's a great time to take it and air it up and see if everything's working out fine. So we'll drop a CO2 12 gram in, put our cap in, and give it a pop. And she's good, and I actually fixed that leak that was happening there. So we have no leaks. We can give her a fire. She's functioning as she should, but that leak came back. Yay. But that's a leak from the O-ring on there, not from anything with the velocity adjuster. This was doing that before I installed that, and I was hoping that it would fix it. I'll have to take it back apart later and probably replace that O-ring that was inside of here. But anyway, that's how we install the velocity adjuster. Now you'll be able to bring your marker down to under 300 feet per second, making it paintball field legal. Next thing you'll have to do is so that your 2.5 millimeter nut driver can go inside of here, because you will need to thread it in just a little bit past. It should never go past flush with the back of this, the back of the velocity adjuster. You'll need to drill this out. I've used a 4 millimeter drill, and all you basically do is take a drill and drill into it, which I've already done. So take this back apart. Let's go ahead and start reassembling the gun. Seems to have stopped leaking. Yay! Go ahead and place our barrel back in place. Our cylinder shaft. Place this in. When you're reinstalling this spring needs to be installed correctly so that the barrel can slide. So you're going to slide it in. Get it to line up like so. Make sure that your barrel is sliding correctly. Next we'll take our spring for the cylinder shaft. There's probably a proper name for that, but I don't know what it is. And take other clamshell half. We're going to put it on like so. And then put all of the 15 screws back in place, which I'm not going to do right now because nobody wants to see that. So this is an example of, I turn this in. Show you how far you should never screw it past. If you screw it too far in, you'll start leaking. There is a troubleshooting guide on M. Carter Brown. So that's about as far as it should ever go in. So now that it's flush back here, you should never go beyond that. So you see function still, and that would put it at its lowest velocity. And we screw it all the way back out to get to its highest velocity. The only reason you would probably, like I said earlier, need to take this apart to deal with anything with this velocity adjuster is if it's a cold day and you're needing to remove volume spacers so that you can get up to velocity. Because at this point, even on a very cool day, you would still be well over 300 feet per second with this all the way out like so. And even hear the loud, how much difference the air released was. So that's how you install that. If there's any questions, you can contact me through M. Carter Brown or YouTube. Okay, thank you for watching my video. I apologize that I'm probably the most boring video you've watched today.